Manchester United out of the FA Cup. Congratulations to Fulham. A penalty shootout settles it. Another poor start to the game by United. Poor defending at the corner cost us. But the defending champions out. Man City, the clear favourites. It's anybody's tournament, really, though, with a number of sort of dark horses to look at. We're going to delve into this game in more detail, review your comments, and, of course, go through your full fan highlights. Hit the like and the share button. I'm sure many of you will, because you don't like Man United. We're your biggest rivals, and I understand it. Let's go. Manchester United crash out of the FA Cup on penalties. Bruno Fernandes equalizer gave us some hope, some brilliant opportunities, really carved out of nothing by young 17-year-old Obi. Well saved by Leno. In fairness to Onana, some big saves from him today as well to keep out Smith Rowe and Sessegnon. But it wasn't good enough from Manchester United today. Yes, Amorrim has limited resources with the vat of injuries and the fact this is not his squad. But it still wasn't good enough by the individuals today, in my personal opinion, especially when we get the ball to the edge of the box. The lack of quality is absolutely glaring. Everybody can have their say, though. Give us your thoughts, give us your feelings, give us your opinions in the comments section below. But I don't want to go any further without congratulating Fulham, because often when it's your team and you go out and the frustrations are there, you can forget about the opponents. And I thought Fulham today, I thought they started quite slowly, to be honest. Built themselves into the game well, hard to penetrate. There's a reason why I think they're the third best away team in the Premier League this year. They're so well drilled. Marco Silva has got his team. They know what types of profiles. They know the types of football players that fit that system and for where they are in the football pyramid. And I thought they did a very, very good job today. It took a fantastic goal by Man United to equalize. And then after that point, we had opportunities, but still, whether it was Bassi, whether it was Anderson with some great blocks and last-ditch interceptions, or Leno coming up trumps, they absolutely delivered. So I want to say a well done to them. My view's always been the same in terms of cup football. I hope Fulham go on to win it now. I always would rather go out to the team that wins the trophy, unless it's, of course, a massive rival of mine. So congratulations to them first and foremost, because they deserved it. It's as simple as that. Yes, Man United had more shots. Yes, we had more shots on target, but so many of them were pitiful today. When I look at the Man United team, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of rivals that will want to go in on Amorrim. And I get why, because he's the rival manager. You'll go on. Listen, if Fergie was still managing now after winning 13 league titles, 2 Champions Leagues, a treble, the double, and everything else, when he lost games, he'd be getting heavily ridiculed. So I understand it entirely. For me, I wasn't overly frustrated with the starting lineup that was picked today, barring one element. One element for me was a problem. And that's because of how much he grew into the game today. And I thought that young Chido Obi, he looked a little nervous when he came on. And like in the Everton game, his first couple of touches looked a little bit heavy. The ball was bouncing off of him. But the longer the game went on, the more duels he got into with Bassi, the more runs he made. He had a few shots that were good. He found his touch. There was a moment in the second half of extra time where the ball, it might have been the second half of extra time, where the ball was played into him and he trapped it dead. He rolled it out. He made a great run to the right. Just nobody fed him back in. And I look at that now, and if I'm going to be critical of Amorrim today, it's starting Højlund has to stop. Starting Højlund has to stop at this point. Give young Obi an opportunity. Don't play him into the ground. Don't make him play 90 minutes every game, every week. But there's a confidence thing here. And young Obi's confidence at the moment, his speed, the fact that he's used to scoring goals at academy and under 21 level, I think will just change the dynamic slightly. And the only reason I'm asking for Obi is we don't have any other options. Man United had 0 attacking options outside of Obi and Garnacho to come on. I was a little jealous, and I never thought I'd say this of Fulham, that we're bringing on Even Willian. I wish we had someone of Willian's ability right now or above to come into that attack. So that's the only real element that I'm frustrated with when it comes to the manager today. In terms of his system, it needs players. It absolutely needs players. We could hold on to the ball well. The approach plays decent. We can work the ball to the edge of the box. When Garnacho came on, we had a bit more cutting edge and drive and thrust, but I still think we need levels above that young man, more experience that young lad doesn't have. But we just didn't have the quality in that final third to really hurt Fulham. And you need to be good to hurt Fulham. Look at their points away from home. They're a very, very accomplished team. And we didn't have that. The problem is one, the squad isn't very good. Two, the January window by Ineos was very, very poor. And then you throw into the mix the injuries that we've suffered to the likes of Ahmad. Even Mainu, who is a midfield player, you can put him more advanced. He can beat a man. He's not the fastest player in the world. But if he drops a shoulder and beats a man, he can, over the first 5 to 6 yards, get away from somebody. A lot better than Bruno can. A lot better than Casemiro. A lot better than Christian Eriksen can. So I'm not really frustrated with the system per se. In terms of the substitutions, I saw a lot of people angry. I kept my powder dry. I'm not too sure why Maguire came off, but it wasn't as though Maguire coming off is why we're out of the tournament. I also didn't understand why Ugarte came off early. But again, maybe he could have. Maybe it's because he had the yellow card and he didn't want to risk him for the next league game, potentially. But outside of that, the only other thing I would have done different, if I'm going to be critical of Amorim today, is when Garnacho came on, Delo set the equalizer up. So maybe I'm wrong for saying this, but I would have swapped Delo to the other side. So we had a bit of a threat on the right and the left-hand side. I'd put Maz on the left. But having said that, as I say, Delo makes the cutback for the Bruno goal. So look, from my perspective, I wasn't expecting much more than this. If we were going to win, it would be narrow. We ended up narrowly losing. I know that Staffy and Don and myself got a lot of criticism on Friday. I didn't really get involved in the conversation. I just listened in relation to saying we don't have a good recent record against Fulham. It was very clear what Staffy was talking about. The performances. We're rarely the dominant team. We've had a few scrappy wins where it'd be a brilliant moment from Bruno or a thunderbolt strike with a deflection from Martinez as an example. And the game was a similar pattern today. I think we actually defended better today than we did in those games because barring those long-range efforts from Smith Rowe, it wasn't as though they were getting in behind very often and peppering the goalkeeper. I think they only had 3 shots on target 10 shots in total, only 3 on target in the whole game. So that element was better. But sometimes in football, it isn't even about tactics and systems or anything like that. Often in football, it's about probability. And when I look at our recent performances against Fulham and how we've narrowly won, I just had a gut feeling we might go out today. Just a gut feeling, not based on anything to do with the football itself. Just the sort of the probability element of it. And look, we're out, gutted, absolutely gutted to be out because I always want to win these trophies. But look, this team needs open heart surgery in terms of the squad. 5, 6, 7 players in the summer. I think we spoke about that on 100 match reactions now. So there's no need to really reiterate that. But look, congratulations to Fulham. They deserved it. And Man United are out. It's as simple and as straightforward as that. I'm going to go to some of your comments here. First super chat says, aside from the assist, Delo is an awful player. He has. Look, I actually thought he started the first 20 minutes quite well. So I'll be fair to him. I thought the first 20 minutes was quite strong. And then he faded. And he's just not good enough. And now that he's been given the opportunity to be this attacking player that a lot of United fans propped up as being his best attribute, now that he's been given that role where attacking is a huge part of what he's meant to do, he's nowhere near the standard that we need. And we need a lot better than him. That is fair. I wouldn't trust Man United to sell a piece of cheese to a mouse. You need to tell me what that's in reference to. I get the analogy, but I don't know what you're applying that analogy to. What are you expecting United to sell? What are you looking for United to sell to make that true? Or what don't you trust them in that regard? Sorry. The last United manager that had this bad of a start to a season was Sir Alex Ferguson. Amorrim needs time and these players. Look, some people will disagree with you, Andre. They'll say, no, he doesn't. He should turn this around straight away. The reason why I'm not siding with those fans is nothing personal. I'm not saying they shouldn't have that opinion. It's typically speaking, the people I follow, the people I know, the people I like that are asking for that generally have said that about all the other managers. No, not good enough. Move him on to get somebody else in. I just don't want to do that for a 7th or 8th time on the bounce. The Sir Alex Ferguson thing, I'm not going to compare him to Sir Alex because of what happened afterwards. But the one thing Sir Alex was doing was a fundamental full top to bottom rebuild. Where in years prior to that, throughout the late 70s and 80s, it was very much just, let's bring in a manager, let's buy some players, let's turn it around. And when Sir Alex was interviewed for the job, the biggest thing he spoke about was basically scrapping everything and dragging it all out and going again. And there's elements are being built that nobody was aware of. The academy had died and fallen off. United had the greatest academy in England, and then it disappeared for over a decade or so. And all these things were going on. So there are similarities where it won't end in the same way, because I don't think anybody will ever do what Sir Alex Ferguson did. But listen, if people want him out, they're entitled to say they want him out. The one thing they can't, nobody that wants him out can do, is deliver a plan that they think will work, that's different to the previous 5 or 6. They can deliver a different manager, a different name, a different system, and say, I think that will work. But outside of just having faith in a better head coach in their eyes, there's nothing new to that conversation. So I find it quite a tired one, if I'm being honest. Can Amorrim coach if he does not get his players? What do you mean by this? You need to expand on that question. I'm going to assume what you mean is, can't he make this team better by coaching them? And it's a fair point. But if you take an average heavyweight boxer, say David Price, and you give him Alexander Usyk's coach, he isn't going to be able to turn him into one of the best heavyweight boxers of a generation just because he has a better coach. There's multiple things wrong with this squad. There's some players that are not good enough technically. There are some that don't have the physical attributes to play this way. We have just literally witnessed Pep Guardiola, the greatest manager of a generation, lose a handful of players to injury and age, and his system fall apart. The remedy to that wasn't Pep's got to coach them. The remedy to that is, let's drop 200 million euros, and then in the summer, let's drop 250, 300 million more to bring in better quality replacements, and to replace. It isn't just about let's coach them, let's work out a way. He's made them more competitive. He's stopped that rot of bad games, which is doable. But yeah, new players. It's this idea that we often go through this with coaches. I was a big fan. Now that he's left, I can say it with a bit more vim. Big fan of Klopp. Klopp didn't just come in and take over Rodgers' team and turn him into one of the best teams in the world. They come in and they broke goalkeeper transfer records, centre-back transfer records, went and got Mane and Salah. Firmino was already there, and he was a good enough player, and Henderson was there, and he was a good enough player. But pretty much everybody else was either nurtured through the academy or purchased. Some were big signings, some were signings nobody saw coming, like Robertson. But new players was the answer. I don't know if there's very many examples of a team broken like United are, where a new coach has come in, taken that broken squad that's been put together over all these years, and turned that team into one of the best teams in the world. Everybody has spent money. So this idea that he's got to coach better, maybe, but show me the examples of that over a short, medium, long-term example. Show me that. I don't know if that exists, my friend. Amorrim out, even Ten Hag wasn't this crap fraud. Fair play. You're allowed that opinion. I'm not going to challenge. I'm just literally not going to challenge the opinion. Feel free to express it. Let's be real. We've been getting away with this crap the majority of the season. I like Ruben, but I don't want to hear talk of squad or injuries. Nobody's dealing with them. Everybody's dealing with them. So what are you putting this down to then, Josh? That's fine. So if we're not going to speak about him not having any of his own players available, him coming in mid-season, him not having a pre-season, and injuries on top of that, if we're not talking about any of that, what do you put the bad results down to? Do you just simply think he just isn't a good enough coach and we've made a bad hire? I'd love to get your opinions on that, mate. United out on my birthday. Love to see it. Yeah, I'm actually getting more stick from fans of clubs that went out in the last round. Whatever makes them feel better. This team won the FA Cup last season, by the way. Shocking. Yes, because this squad has been built to play the way it did under Ten Hag. And if we would have continued, and the manager's told us this, and I agree with him, we could have continued to play in the formation and in the way in which that we were under Ten Hag and we were under Ollie, and we could have stuck to that and we could have adapted to the players. And in the short term, he literally said, you'll have some success, you'll win some trophies, we'll win a few more games, but that 18 months, 2 years, we'll be back where we were with Ten Hag and with Ollie and with Jose and with LVG. This method is going to take, this is why I'm not panicking, because he told us we could go backwards before we go forward, and people have forgotten that. And I'm just willing to give it a chance. I can't guarantee it's going to work. I don't know. I'm just willing to give it an opportunity. The same as a lot of you are not willing to give it the opportunity. And that's entirely up to you. Eddie Howe turned Newcastle into a Champions League team quickly. If you actually look at Eddie Howe's start, he lost a lot of games from the November through to the January window. The difference between the two clubs is that Newcastle went out in that January and spent a sizable amount of money. It wasn't until the following season that he turned them into a team that finished into a Champions League position. So if you're going to use the Eddie Howe example, one, you have to give it until the end of next season, because the success you're talking about, Bird, came next year, if we're looking at this through the lens of Amorrim. So I hear your point. Second season, he had them into the Champions League. And if you want to hold that standard to Amorrim, absolutely feel free to. But you have to give him until the end of next season. You can't do the comparison and then not give him the same amount of time. That makes it a false equivalence. Terry, or the end result anyway is false, because you can't compare two things that are not relatively similar in time. Terry, I think you missed my first super chat. Okay, no, I'm coming back to that, my friend. I'm coming back to it because I was working my way back up. Sorry. Terry, I don't even get disappointed anymore. I just want the season to be over so Amorrim can get his players and a full preseason. And Andre, listen, I agree with you. Equally, what I want to say to the people saying sack him, this isn't a debate. I'm not debating anybody that wants him sacked. Not because I can't, not because I'm scared of losing. There's no way. Right now, nobody's convincing me it's the right thing to do without presenting me with a better plan. You know, without presenting me with a plan and an opportunity. So for me, I feel I'm open-minded to any suggestion to fix the club, but it can't just be sack manager, bring a better one in. It's too shallow of a response. But even if you've got a response, I promise this to you now. And if I don't do this, I'll pay your mortgage or your rent for 12 months for you. Absolute guarantee. Come on and break down why sacking him and who you would bring in is better. I won't be challenging it per se. I might ask some questions to understand it. Just want to hear the explanation. I'm not debating the subject. Eddie Howe's team was in relegation. Yes, they were, and they improved in the second half of the season, absolutely. The differences I see is this. There's a lot of these Man United players that are disgruntled and frustrated because they know their time at the club, earning exorbitant amounts of money, is going to come to an end. The club are stripping back on playing individuals that volume of money that are not of the standard, and they know they're going to be moved on. So I think there's almost although publicly they will all say everything's fine and dandy, I do think there's some real needle. The difference, Bird, at Newcastle. So again, whenever you talk about these situations, I think you have to get the energy right. At Newcastle, I think there was a reaction to, wow, this could be something. I'm at a club that's now got these new owners, the richest people in the world now own the club. They've got all this ambition to get to the top. Where with us right now, even though we've got a new ownership structure, there isn't the same enthusiasm towards our ownership. There still isn't the light at the end of the tunnel financially that we want, as an example. So even the takeovers are not the same. You have to factor that in to begin with. Secondly, these players at Newcastle got inspired. These guys were doing ice baths in paddling pools from Argos. Suddenly they're told the world's going to change. I'm not surprised to see a very different type of reaction and uplift, where United have got a lot of players who have been stealing a living and stealing the best living in England, being paid more than any other group of players. Suddenly they're realizing that's all going. Of course, the reaction is not going to be the same. It's like, imagine going into two separate workforces. One, they're earning 20 grand a year each, terrible facilities, and the new boss says, you're going to all start getting pay rises if you perform. You're going to get brand new facilities, and we're going to the top. Versus the other workforce, listen, you're all overpaid, you're all underperforming. Over the next 12 months, most of you are going, and we're reducing what we're paying everybody, you're going to get a difference in reaction. So like I always say, I need the variables before I can do the equation, ever before I come to a conclusion. So the situations are not even comparable in the same way. When you look at what was inherited, the direction, the ownership takeover, very, very different. However, let's just take your example, Bird. You still have to give, based on your own logic and example, Amorrim until the end of next season before you judge. Otherwise, the Eddie Howe comparison doesn't fit. Eddie Howe is worse now than last season. Again, I'm not even debating how good or bad Eddie Howe is. I'm just responding to Bird's comment there. Thank you, Luke, encouraging everybody to smash the like button. Please make sure you've done that and make sure you're subscribing if you haven't done so already. Really do appreciate that. And Mr. Sham here, thank you. 32 months as a member. That means a great, great deal to me. It truly, truly does. Terry, shouts out to Danny Welbeck. Always a Mackin at heart. Yeah, Welbeck's goal today was excellent, phenomenal. And I'm really happy for Brighton today. You know, when people sort of talk about them as they're a nothing club, it's the first time in their top flight history they've won 5 games on the bounce. You're talking about a team 20 to 25 years ago had no money, they were a nothing club in comparison to a lot of the gems in the Premier League. To get to it, they need to start adding trophies. They do at some point need to start winning those trophies to add that silverware to their history. But I like what they stand for as a club. And they did, by the way, and this is where people like to shit on them, but I look at them as an example. I'm not saying follow their model 100% because clubs like Man Utd, Chelsea, Arsenal have more money. But you don't need an owner who's worth 500 billion to become champions of England. If you look at their growth and where they sit currently in the pyramid, and compare the value of their owners to Man United's, to Arsenal's, to Liverpool's, they're relative paupers, especially when you look at the turnover of the clubs. But if you have a process, if you have a culture, if you have a way of operating as a club that remains the same, regardless of who the head coach or manager is, in the modern day game, you can progress. You can progress. Yeah, big shout out to them. Very, very good indeed. Man United capitulated. So again, it's capitulation. We weren't ever leading in the game to capitulate. That wouldn't be the word I would use. We've capitulated since 2013. That I completely agree with you on. I really, really do. Thank you, Lumen, encouraging everybody to smash the like button. Jerry says, so Terry's logic, he's happy to play shit football and win nothing for 18 months. What a loser mentality. See, that's not what, if that's what you've heard, if that's what you interpret it as, I'm not going to challenge you individually, but that is not what I've said at all. It's, my logic is very clear. There's no guarantees at the end of it we're going to be a better team. Can't guarantee it. I'm not in the room. I've said all along, and I want you to challenge the logic and not make up conclusions that I haven't said. And that is, I want to try something different to the approach of at least the last 2 to 3 managers. I don't want to adapt to the players. I want us to create a squad for a set style of play, and I don't care who that manager is and what the set style of play was. Couldn't care less because my personal feelings on that are not important. And I want to complete a squad rebuild and a cultural reset of the football club. And I'm not going to go into what those things mean because everybody knows what they mean. The irony, the irony in all that as well is you get Standards FC that go, oh, projects and cultural reset. What do you think makes Real Madrid so good, you absolute, you muttons? You muttons. What makes them so special is their fucking culture. So, yeah, there we go. But, yeah, not what I said. Not what I said at all. Terry, if, like you say, most of these players will be gone soon, then why waste time coaching the Ruben Amorim way and get the bad results? Oh, it's a great question. And I'll tell you why, okay? Monkeys in a cage. You've heard this analogy before, and it stands true. This experiment was done, I think, in America 20, 30 years ago. They put 10 monkeys in a big enclosure. And every single time any of the monkeys went on a certain set of stairs, all of the monkeys, everybody, but they all got sprayed with water. So what started happening is anyone went near them stairs, the rest of the monkeys would stop you. They would stop all their other monkeys. And then what they started doing once a week, once a month, I have to go read it again, the timescale, is they took an old monkey out and put a new one in. And eventually, you had 10 monkeys in the cage who had never been sprayed with water. but they still wouldn't allow anybody to walk up the stairs. And that is what happens when you coach with repetition, 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 repetition. Yes, you're never going to get rid of this whole squad in one summer. Impossible. So you need to create a way of playing, a way of training, a way in which you want everybody to behave, the kind of diets you want everybody on, when you want them to go to bed, all these elements that elite teams, elite winners have. You start it straight away. And you know it's going to be hard because for a lot of people, they realize this is harder work than we've been used to. And you get kickback and you get problems. And then the hope is, and there's always a hope in this, Lou, because there's never any foregone conclusions in anything, is that every time you add somebody new, they slip into the right way of operating rather than continuing the bad way of operating. All the bad habits, the bad diets, the lack of work rate, not learning the system. You build a squad for 3 years and then go, now we're going to change and start the behavioral change. It's never going to work. That is not how any elite team has ever been built in the history of sport. So that's why you have to do it that way around. You can disagree with me, but the only way, but you're not disagreeing with me. You're disagreeing with literally how all the greats that have built teams say it has to be done. Jurgen Klopp didn't come in and change nothing until 2019 when he built his first squad. He started changing things day one. Pep, day one. Wenger, when he came into Arsenal, day one. Fergie at United, day one. Cloughy at Forest, day one. They didn't leave it 3 or 4 years and then go, now I'm going to start being. No one starts their job, right? Yeah, you know, the last manager, you know, he was flirting with all the women, sending terrible messages, letting staff get away with going home early, never disciplined anybody, paid people late. What I'm going to do as your new boss, I'm going to continue all that behavior until you're all sacked and I've built all my new team. And the new team, you're going to suffer with the bad messages and the bad behavior and the lateness until I've got a complete team that I've hired. On that day, then we're going to start behaving properly. Fuck me, pink. Imagine life that way. It would never work. It would never, ever, ever, ever work. It has to, and you can say it's waffle all you want, my friend, but I know when you say waffle, what you mean is shit. That makes a lot of sense. I can't debunk it, so I'm going to put in a little ad hominem attack. Now, like I say, there's no guarantees at the end of this process. I'll use the word that triggers people. United will be this team I hope they are. All I'm saying is I'd rather give it a go than repeat the mistakes of the past. Tell me what's wrong with that logic, and maybe I'll change my mind. Don't attack me. Don't say anything negative. Just say what's wrong with that logic. I'm going to bring the panel out now to have their say on the show because I want to talk about the game. Okay, the game is what we're here to talk about more so than anything else. Obviously, we went with the super chats. We've got one from Red and Blue and Anders and a few others. We'll come back to you guys soon. But KJ's here with me, Sunshine as well, and Husam. I'm actually going to go to Husam first of all. A lot of the viewers, Husam, have watched today's game of Man United, and they believe we essentially should be asking for Amorrim to be sacked. Do you agree today's performance was because of the manager and the remedy should be sacking him? What's your thoughts on what a lot of our audience this evening are saying?
My energy is consistent when it comes to managers. Like I said this even last season and during the summer, I was like, I understand why people want Ten Hag sacked, but I understand why they're keeping him as well, to just like give him a go, essentially with this new ownership and see what happens. And I keep the same energy for Amorrim. The one thing I will say about Amorrim, though, I understand patience. Patience is required. You expect fan bases to be patient. You expect fan bases to like get behind the manager, specifically in the beginning. But at the same time, the reason why I understand both parts now is because essentially you also need to see something to back. Like I'm not going to be, you know, mad or call them crazy if they're Amorrim out now. Like they have every right to be Amorrim out if what they're seeing they don't think eventually leads to success or trophies or whatever it is. But if they believe in the vision and the project and the way that they're going, and they think that maybe certain positions need to be upgraded on, like a striker, like other positions, like Sunshine is here on the panel, and probably the biggest W take on YouTube when it comes to Man United is the fact that he said we didn't need to upgrade on a keeper. Many people disagreed, and now 2 years later it's like, okay, if you kept De Gea, would it have made that much difference to your life over signing a striker that can bag you 30 goals, over a midfielder, over these things? And I think there's a lot going wrong at Man United right now, and it's not just the manager. I did a watch along today, obviously, because it's really the only FA Cup game of this weekend that's worth watching. If we're being serious, like I'm being dead serious, it's literally the only one that's like worth sit down and watch. And not at one point in time, barring the Garnacho miss from like the one-on-one, did I ever feel like, oh, Man United are gonna win this game, and I'm supposed to be worried that they could be on the road to another trophy. Like I always felt like Fulham, for the most part, were in some form of control of that game. And at Old Trafford, I don't think that should be happening. But when it comes to Ruben Amorim, it's kind of a long answer, but I'm going to do the Terry Flewers here, and I'm going to sit on the fence, and I'm going to say, I understand both perspectives, but if I was in your place, I would still say give the manager at least until the summer to get 3 or 4 of his players, and then at the start of next season, take it from there. But if you're Amorim out now, I can't be mad at that, because you have every right to be Amorim out. You have every reason to be Amorim out. So that's my honest opinion on the Amorim thing.
And what have I sat on the fence on? Just out of interest, what are you referring to?
I'm just doing the Terry Flewers, like I'm gonna be the host that sits on the fence and
goes here. You mean be professional when you're
non-Man United topics, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I just want to understand whether it was a Man United opinion I was on the fence with. But yeah, look, listen, I hear you on that. And look, anyone who wants him out, I'm not angry at them. The only problem I've got with everyone who wants him out is I haven't heard a piece of logic that's different to repeating what we've done the previous 7 times. And what you also get is comments like this from the red and blue, is Man's deluding himself. I love how he speaks like that. A little bit of affectation there, but Man's deluding himself about Ineos. Firstly, I haven't really mentioned Ineos directly on the stream, so you bringing them up's crazy. He says, how are you sure they are planning to rebuild the whole squad? Now, again, so they've told us they're going to do it. I'm giving them time to complete it. If they don't, I'll criticize them. What I typically don't do in live red and blue is criticize Pete. I don't criticize KJ for failing to hit a target before the target's due. That would be weird, right? It says, or is it just your wishful thinking? Well, of course I have wishful thinking that we rebuild the squad and it's better. Why would a football fan not wish and hope? Even so, if you take the biggest Arteta outer in the world, he can be the biggest lame-brained delinquent in the world. But I still think at his core, he or she wants Arsenal to get back to the top. That's why they're frustrated, right? So, of course, there is wishful thinking from myself there. At the same time, though, to throw your question back at you, you're someone that sort of talks about sacking the manager. You've super chatted before. You shouldn't be backing him. But you also think that Ineos are never going to build a squad that's good enough. They're never going to spend the money. And if you're someone that, whether you like Amorim or not, if you don't think the club's ever going to build a squad that's good enough to win, we should just stop talking about the head coach and manager then and focus on the root cause problem. So that's the issue that I have with the conversation, is that a question gets asked, you answer it, and then the goalpost gets moved or the framing of the question gets shifted into something else, as opposed to just trying to catch people out, as opposed to just, I understand your stance and we can move on from it. So, yes.
Well, he will never understand your stance. And there's a reason for it. The reason why he'll never understand your stance or my stance is because he's a PSG fan. And a PSG fan / a City fan / someone like that will never, ever, ever want their owner out, because they know that the owner will never be at fault for the position that they're in. So they can focus their energy and shift it towards the manager. So he will never understand where you're coming from, because
I understand, but you're wrong there, because he slags off Ineos all the time saying we've got bad owners. That's fine. He also turned around and says that people are right to want Amorim sacked. Again, I think that's there's a flaw in that logic. Because if you don't trust Ineos to ever build a squad that's good enough, it doesn't matter who the coach is, you're always going to fall short. So therefore, have the reaction to these things that KJ says when he gets bantered in the group chat. So yeah, let's just shut the club down then. Because that's actually the right response. If we're never going to build a squad that's good enough to win, ever, based on what the red and blue says, we're never going to hire the right people, we're never going to sign the right players. What's your solution to that, Terry? Mine is shut the club down and let's just end with all the titles we've got and let's just watch old video. I'd rather that than continue how we were. If that's the truth of the matter, I'd rather shut the club down than do that. So there is no solution. Just sacking Amorim, what does that do? How does that fix us if they're also right about how bad the owners are? It makes no sense to me to focus on the manager personally. KJ, back to the game today. What do you think went wrong for United? Why do you think we struggled to really penetrate Fulham and score the goals that were needed in the game?
It's just we don't have the right profiles to do anything. We look at our forward line. Xerxes got the tech, we ain't got the speed. Garnacho's got some speed, but his technique is off and his decision making is off. Hoyland's head is gone. I'm seeing man do flicks, back heels at the halfway line while doing build up, and he hitting no one. His head is gone. He's not making the right runs, not making the right decisions. He's just losing combat, losing 1v1 duels with all the centre backs in the world that he plays against. So his head is gone. And then you had old man Ericsson, who again has the tech, but not the pace, the power, or the stamina to keep up with the game. We just don't have the right profiles in attack or midfield to really do anything. And people say go back to the 4-2-3-1 or go to a 4-3-3, go change the system. I was literally watching the game. I was watching Fulham play and how they connect and how they have synergy and relationships as a squad, how all the different profiles fit together. I'm like, even if we did win 2-4 at the back, what does that even equal to? What does that even make us do? We don't do anything. We don't do anything more than what we're doing now. Yeah, okay, cool. We get a couple 3 points here. Maybe we make it through the FA Cup to the quarterfinals, but we're just going to get knocked out anyway. We're just going to end up not being top 4 anyway. So the system thing for me doesn't really matter when you've got a squad build that we have, when we've got a squad roster that we do with loads of, again, individually talent. Cool, they've got it in different areas and would probably and can probably work individually, but all together it's a big mishmash. So yeah, okay, cool. Blame Amorim for not getting the best out of him. Cool, that's fine, whatever you want to say. But even if he was getting the best out of them this season, their max ceiling ain't that high anyway. So I'd rather focus on getting a new squad, and then when that happens, when we get like hopefully 5+ to 8 to maybe hopefully 10 if we're playing Football Manager in the summer, and he's got more of his players, then if you want to cuss him, say Ruben out and all of that, do that, innit? I'm not gonna fight back on that. Like, but we just ain't got a good squad full of profiles that don't match, so we can't really do anything. In a 4-3-3, who's up front 3?
No, listen, I hear you on that, mate. I think there's a lot of... I also think as well, what's really interesting as well is that I wasn't happy with players leaving and no one coming in January. And this is the funniest part as well, is that people get their feelings hurt. And not everyone is turning on Amorrim for the same reasons. But I know for a fact there's a percentage who have said how bad Rashford is as a player, that have seen him leave and Man United haven't improved dramatically. And it's like, well, I can't like sort of admit that it's not Rashford's fault anymore. So now I've got to turn on the manager to sort of create a distraction away from the fact that I got an opinion wrong. And I think that there's a lot of that goes on online nowadays, is people make a prediction. If we sell Rashford, and you can go back and find the tweets, they're there. I remember reading them. Get rid of Rashford and watch this team fly. He's a bad egg. People did it with Pogba. Once Pogba goes, watch this club go to the next level. It doesn't happen because these individual players were never the reason we were bad. The same as, by the way, sacking these managers has never been the reason we were bad. And that's probably my biggest issue with the take of just get rid of him now and abandon whatever we're trying to do, is that, well, it's just repeating the same mistake over and over and over again. And I don't see any way of getting to the end of the, finding light at the end of the tunnel that way. Sunshine, obviously a disappointing night, or afternoon and night for Manchester United fans. A lot of people in our chat, and I want to sort of respond to what they're saying here, really. The manager didn't do enough today. What more do you think in today's game? What better decisions do you think Amorim could have made? What is he not getting the team to do that he should be, in your opinion?
I mean, if I'm being honest, I think he's maximised the most he can do. I think people have to understand, Terry, the difference between making a sound logical judgment based off sound logical expectations given the context to what's going on at Manchester United, and also then making those same decisions but out of desperation. Every season that goes by that we continue to stay on the hamster wheel doing what we're doing, we get less patient. So now we've got this new manager who, by the way, took 4 years to do what he did at Sporting, but people saw him play at Sporting Libs and then go, oh yeah, Amorim ball. Like, you have no concept or understanding how he got to that stage in the first place. No one knew what he was doing 2-3 seasons before that, before they started to hype him up. So it's almost like this quick fix mentality because they can't sit through the struggle, shall we say. And that type of mentality only breeds more disaster, because you have silly expectations from a manager that has only had such a short space of time to not even have a proper window, for one, but two, the same constraints can be said for other managers. The only difference is what people are failing to realize, Terry, is that every manager that comes in has to undo the previous 3, 4, 5 managers we've had. And whilst that's been happening, we've been losing more money and more money. Now we're so broke, it makes it even harder to make a signing. And when we do make the right signing, even if it is on a 40k, 50k a week, like Zirksky, correct me if I'm wrong, then that signing has to work out. Like, there's no room for error whatsoever. And the issue with that is we can then sell them and move them on, but then we then apply extra pressure to these players. So when we're buying Højlund for 72 million, people look at the price tag and have an expectation, not realizing, wait there, he was the second-class striker. We should have been having Harry Kane first one, if we're being serious. He shouldn't be seeing the minutes. But the reality is he's now in that situation where he has to hold the blunt of it. And that, to me, it doesn't sound logical to expect that from a kid. And you can see the pressure that kid's under. We are doing that as a fan base because we've got irrational thoughts based on desperation. Now, I'm not saying it's not wrong to have standards of desperation, but at least have some clear, concise understanding to how you go to be successful. And respectfully, Terry, like you said before, I don't think many people have been successful in life, in sport, or at a higher level, and they don't understand the psyche that goes into sports performance. We can talk about talent all day, in my opinion, but can you get that talent to apply itself to, one, a new system, but two, can you get that talent to apply itself with the right way, in the right way? Sometimes that comes on the athlete. I will say that myself. You've been an athlete yourself as well. It comes down to the player. It has nothing to do with their ability, which is why we talk about Rashford. But sometimes the environment in which they are there to then try and work hard in is so toxic and horrible. And then you've got a manager who's just come in, played great football, battered City, did all this great stuff, and then gets what? 6 months. And then we're all just talking about sacking. And you're telling me that's not irrelevant pressure. I'm sorry. I don't think Amorrim can do any more than what he's doing other than work with what he's got. And I will not judge a manager until he's had 4 years, like I've said, because every manager needs to build for that period of time. And you've got to sit through some ball crap. Yes, you can criticize the manager. If you genuinely think he should have made a sub, fair play. If you genuinely think he should have started Obi over Højlund, no problem. But these are surface level things that you could change that will not make the bigger difference that you ultimately want as a Man United fan.
Yeah, but I totally agree. And I think that you mentioned there about you'd give every manager 4 years. I wouldn't. For me, it's, say we give Amorim 4 years, and by the end of that 4th year, we win a Prem, then we retain it, and then we win a Champions League, and then we win an FA Cup. And then Amorim says, you know what, guys, I've been here 6 years, 7 years. I'm off to go manage Portugal. And we've got a brilliant squad and we're purring. The next manager that comes in, I would have the type of expectations and demand against them that the current Amorim outers have. Someone comes in and we suddenly go from challenging to being 15th in the league. You go, hang on, we know that squad is good, right? We know the culture had been right. We know that there's a coaching issue here. In fact, you'd never let it get this bad. You'd act quickly. And
I agree, Terry. And the funny thing about that is we're basically resetting it to when David Moyes come back. We've got to get back to that stage where the squad is good enough for another manager to come in. And this is what I'm saying. We've got to work backwards.
And Man United fans just ignore this. And I think you're spot on. There was things today, like I say. It's interesting because everyone's been calling for young. I want to speak about Obi for a minute. People have been calling for him to start. And I'm going to be honest with you. When I saw him against Everton last week, there was 2 or 3 times the ball got played to him. And you ever been like in a room where it's like concrete everywhere and you kick a ball and it's like ding, 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 bounces it around, right? You might have gone in there. Like we used to have this place on the estate I grew up on, and you'd go in there and you play like we used to play a game called Sting Ball. But what you do it in there, and someone could boot it against the wall and it would ricochet and you'd get hit with it. It was just a stupid game. He's touched it like that on that first game. There was one first touch where he touched it and it went right over his head. And I remember thinking, oh, is he ready? But then what I saw today was actually Man United players probably not passing the ball to him as much as they should have been. And I think that was because they're worried. But the longer the game went on today, gents, I felt his touch got better, his movement. He realized, hang on, I've just shoulder barged a couple of geezers and I've moved them. I can do more. And this is where I hope, and I don't know about you, KJ, I hope that Amorim looks at him and goes, you know what? Maybe the Sociedad game, maybe the Arsenal game. We've got 2 games this week. I think he should be starting one of them now. What do you say?
Yeah, I think he should start. You instantly saw an improvement in our attacking play as soon as he came on. He's giving you something. And the thing with Højlund right now, he's not even. You see the chances that Obi Martin's made for himself by pressing, by winning the ball in the box and then taking a shot, by being more hungry than the defenders. He's not even doing that. Even that is infectious. You saw Xerxes get better. You saw Garnacho get better. And it's like, we need that just on the front of the pitch. And allow this young man to grow. Now, I'm not saying he needs to play and start from now to the end of the season. Let's not do that because, again, pressure, it might break him mentally and all of these different things. But if you say, you know what, Obi, Sociedad, you start. You miss out on Arsenal. You may even miss out on the second Sociedad game. But Leicester, before the international break, you start again. Like, just give him these opportunities to grow into the game. Because I'm looking at his game, and I'm like, there's fundamentals. There are fundamentals there that you can work with. And if you develop properly, you don't have to spend 600 million, not 600 million. Yeah, that's 60, 70, 80 million on a new striker when you need two of them. You've already got one there. And I just want to say his start to his life at Man United reminds me of when Mason Greenwood first broke through. When he first broke through in 2019, like just after Jose left and Oli was playing him in Champions League and all these different games, he didn't score. He had moments where he's like, kid, he could have done better. But as you saw, the man went away for the summer. He did his work on his body, physicality, he did his work on his technique, and he came back in 2019, 2020, and you started to see the development. Are
you suggesting it's in some respects? I mean, I really wanted him to get the winner today, but in some respects, if he comes in and scores a brace in his first game, a brace in his second game, and looks like a star, maybe that builds up an unrealistic expectation against a 17-year-old. Where maybe what you need is just a little performance here, a performance there, maybe a goal there, maybe lowering the expectation. Because Man United fans, as you say, there's so many of them are so desperate for success. He'll become the star boy, but they'll forget he's 17 and they'll expect Wayne Rooney stuff. And I don't think people realize what Wayne Rooney was he was a phenom at that age. It's not normal. It rarely happens since. So I get where you're coming from. Sunshine, do you think he has earned a right now to be in and around this first team for the next couple of months this season, especially with the injuries we've got?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, from a player's perspective, from his standpoint, if I was to put myself in his shoes, given the situation at United, if you are competitive and love your sport the way he seems to love it, then there's an opportunity there to get some minutes and actually stake a claim in training to say that I'm ready to put myself forward. So from a player's perspective, yes. From a desperation standpoint, from a fan's perspective, yes, you want it because Højlund respectfully isn't pulling up trees, he's making the right runs and putting himself in the right position, but he's not doing anything with it in those moments. So he needs to hold bench more time. That will do great wonders for Obi and hopefully for Højlund as well if he uses it in the right way. And then from a manager's perspective, given the stress from the fan base and whether you agree with that level of stress or pressure or not, or expectations, he needs something up front that will allow him to have a predator up front. Even the 50-50s that were pinging around when he was on the ball will seem to just drop in his favour. And that doesn't happen out of luck, guys. That happens with a level of IQ in the mix of a mess. The certain touches you take will help knock the ball in certain areas. It's just a case of tit for tat, who gets the last touch. So you can see there's goals and opportunities there for him. And with a bit of confidence, cut some minutes, a goal maybe, I think he'll start to thrive. And I think a young player coming in,
he's way too raw. Sadly,
a young player coming in.
Way too raw for what though? None of us.
He's way too raw. Like even today,
sorry.
But no one's saying
like even today watching him, right? He came on. I actually understand where all three of you are coming from because you're saying it can't be worse than what we have already. That's essentially the logic. But like, okay, start him ahead of Højlund because he's an unknown and he could be better than the known crap I'm watching, which I understand what you're saying. But having watched him today from a non-Man United emotionally involved perspective, he's way too raw. Like you could tell he's too young.
To what? To start every week?
R-A-W. Like he's just like, okay, I'll explain you. Like you could tell he's like academy level still and still needs a lot of development. Like I don't think, and I'll be honest with you, I think if you start him against Sociedad or Arsenal, the pressure will eat him alive. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I'm with you. To be fair, Husam, I wouldn't go as far as KJ and say I would start him in those high pressure games, but I will give him a significant amount of minutes if
Yeah,
the
like
star
30
guys.
minutes. Yeah,
So,
30
so,
minutes.
no, so for example, an honest example, if Fulham pulls out a stinker at 60 minutes and respectfully needs to come off the pitch, that type of pressure I could apply to Obi and say, go finish the 30 minutes for me. Do what you can do in 30 minutes. That
I
30
agree.
minutes is good enough for his development because respectfully, if you're a manager and you've got to be cutthroat at United, sadly, you've got to go, okay, if I've got no options, Obi, you've got to go 30 minutes. I'll give you saving grace for the mistakes, but build yourself in like you did, for example, today's game in Fulham and try and make something happen for me. Those type of situations may arise for Obi, and I wouldn't be objective to it because one, we haven't got another striker to come on, but two, players do need to come off that pitch if they're not pulling the weight or doing good enough. And if Obi's available and he's prepared to do what he did today against Fulham, there's nothing wrong with that. But I wouldn't start him in any of the next 4 or 5 games at all. But he needs minutes.
No, I get why you wouldn't start him into that, but I'm just viewing it as more of just what is the actual harm in starting him? Like as Man United football, as Man United Football Club, where we're at now, what is the difference between Obi and Højlund? If we're being serious,
the biggest issue, Cage, is like we did it with Greenwood, we did it with Rashford. We stifle young players' developments because of our environment.
How is getting 60 minutes stifling?
And the reason I say that, and again, it's with a heavy heart I have to say this, but our fan base, because of the desperation, they've done it with Højlund as well. They lose track of what that player is, where they are in their career, and what they're actually capable of doing, and they get sidetracked with the fee. Yes, okay, fair play. Obi came for real cheap from Arsenal, but the point is still the same. We apply that pressure subconsciously or consciously, knowingly or not, because United need to offload.
Yeah.
And if that kid turns up and scores 2-3 goals and has a Rashford start to the season like he did when he was under LVG, that pressure's going to be piled onto him. And when he's crap or he struggles again, they're going to be reminded of where he is and they're going to start caving in on him. That's the biggest issue. For our future, I'd much rather go through the shit having Højlund there with the expectation of Højlund already knowing that he needs to start bagging.
But the thing is, he's also carving on the pressure. So we're talking about this pressure thing.
Yes, but
one second, let me finish.
Sorry, yeah, go on.
Yeah, he's already crumbling under the pressure, right? So we're just going to be throwing this guy that's basically more finished than Obi. Obi's got a fresh mind. He's got a fresh mentality. Him coming in for 60 minutes and performing and seeing what he can do is more helpful for Man United than the guy who's already finished at playing 60 minutes. Højlund coming off the bench could be giving him the confidence that he needs to return back to some kind of form.
100%. I agree with you, and this is why I said to you, if Højlund does come off the bench and he does get sub 60 minutes and Obi gets 30, then it does wonders for both players. I just think, me personally, I'll speak for myself, not for anyone else. Me personally, I'm happy to sit through the fire and watch the shit at the fan and let it go everywhere, knowing it'll get cleaned up. If I know that someone's going to turn off the flipping the switch at the end, and then we'll start again. For me, I'm thinking more of our future rather than the immediate impact now, and that for me is weighs more than the immediate.
Listening to both of you talk, and of course Husam as well, I was enjoying that listening. I know some people might clip me up and say, why wasn't it challenging? Because I do like to listen as well. I think you're both talking sense, but I think you're almost both looking at it. KJ's looking at it through how he will treat the player. Same as I would. I wouldn't. I know where this kid is. I understand the issues with Garnacho right now. Some will say, I've always said he's a bad player. But like most of us said, maybe he's getting too much game. For the first 2 seasons, most level-headed, sensible Man United fans said, I think he's starting too much football. There's too much pressure on him to be the main guy. Now that we've reduced the squad and he literally is the only attacker we have who can really run at people with the ball. Xerxes better technically, but he doesn't have that speed to get past people. I feel like he's crumbling under that pressure even more, but that's almost like a needs must because of the way the squad is. Equally, I get where you're coming from, Sunshine, because if he goes into the first team and starts a few games, you will get that, well, he's old enough to play, so he's old enough to be criticized like everybody else. Yeah. And that is just that for me is a repugnant, almost thuggish way of looking at young football players. It's just, I'm going to treat them like they're a full-grown man. It's like, no, bro, they've not been starred up and they've moved up from juvie to man's prison early, where you're going to give them the rite of passage. This is professional football. They don't need to be treated harshly, nastily by anyone. And people also, Madrid don't do that to their young players. No one does that to their young players. But I know it will happen. And that's where I'm in this between a rock and a hard place. I'd love to see him give him more. I wouldn't mind seeing him start a game or two, but I almost feel like, let's say start Sociedad. Just say we start him. Bags a brace. I wouldn't then say, have to start Arsenal now. It's the case of, for me, it's like, no, he started that game. Maybe he's on the bench for the next one. You know, one, you've got to help keep his feet on the floor. Two, this is the thing about nurturing young talent. Sometimes it's not just about playing them. It's knowing when to play them and when not to. Fergie with Rooney, by the time we got him, had already become a global star. There were certain matches where if there was something bad in the media, or maybe he had a bad few games, would be away at Everton. And sometimes he wouldn't even have him in the squad because he knew that might be too much for Rooney on that day. And he might do something stupid and injure himself, might get himself sent off. Then we're missing him for 3 games. So he would make these decisions, even when Rooney was 18, 19, 20 years of age. And I think it's so important to do this. Funnily enough, 1998, my dad, I remember sitting with my dad watching football, and it was in the build-up to the, the media coverage was massive. And my dad was saying, please, I hope we don't start David Beckham. We should start Darren Anderton against Argentina. And me and my brothers, I shut up, Dad. Like, Beckham's better than Anderton. Darren Anderton was a really good player, by the way. And my dad said, no, Beckham is a better player. He said, but he's a little petulant. He kicks out a lot. Ironically, I remember this conversation like it was yesterday. He kicks out a bit and goes, I'm worried. He went, the Argies, they'll be on him. They'll be on him. And then when Beckham kicked out, I remember looking at my dad, and he just went, I told you, like, I could just see it happening a mile away. And that was a moment where if Glenn Hoddle was managing better, he should have seen, well, they know what they're going to do to Beckham. We know Beckham is, because he didn't start the tournament, and then he came in for the Colombia game and scored. There was all this hype. That was a time where what you should have done with a young Beckham was go, you're coming out the team again. Yeah. And it's Beckham's still responsible for kicking out. I'm not saying it's not on him. But I still think there are times where you have to know what to do. The problem, and I think you're right, Sunshine, is there are certain Man United fans online that I actually think are licking their lips at the idea of young Obi coming into the team, because a lot of these people online thrive through being negative about the football club. They're loving the fact we're out today. They'll love the fact that Garnacho didn't have a great game. They'll love these things because they get to be negative about the club. It's their brand. It's the way they operate. So I do get it from both sides.
And to be fair, Terry,
the only way we get rid of it, the only way the club's ever going to get rid of it is for the club to become successful, and then these people will die away naturally. Because we saw it in that first 6 months of the Ten Hag. I remember having a conversation with KJ again. You notice that we haven't seen any of those guys on TikTok or those guys on Twitter. I haven't seen one tweet of theirs trend for 6 months, and it's because for 6 months it all went away because we were winning a lot of our games, growing in the league, and we won a trophy. And that's the sad nature of where we're at. Is that we're fighting against rivals. We've got all these problems coming up. But the biggest thing we're fighting against at the moment or one of the biggest things is a lot of our own very, very toxic fans who, a lot of them are making, especially now that X pays you, and they've got all the people on stake and everything else. There is a career to make a lot of money out of hating on your own football club when it isn't even necessary. Sometimes you criticize, but they will turn on Obi the same as they've turned on every other player and blame them for where we are. Those players will leave, and then they'll keep moaning about what's the next problem to.
But even if you put the fans to the side, the point that me and Neji agreed on is the same stuff. Like, I just think, look, your next 2 games, one is a round of 16 Europa League game, which is essentially the last thing left to fight for in terms of trophies this season. And the second one is a massive rivalry game, 2 clubs who hate each other, Old Trafford. You know, with the context of you eliminating them of the FA Cup, obviously they'd want to come in and do something in that game. With the context of Chido, hating on Arsenal on social media, like it's way too much there for a young kid to handle. What you're saying is also true. I mean, he could come out of it the other way and be absolutely phenomenal. And you'd be like, wow, we have a talent on our hands.
And if
the problem is, if it does go wrongly, it goes really wrongly. That's the issue with it. So.
Also, if he comes out, let's say KJ's logical theory comes through, and his way of going about the situation pays off. Everyone's sitting here, other than yourself, of course, I'm sure, but everyone else, United fans, sitting here going, yeah, fair play, KJ. Bob on. There's nothing wrong with what KJ's saying, and I don't think nothing wrong. I think both of them are logically sound, and I think sometimes in clubs, people forget that there are 2 ways to approach difficult situations that could equally be right for the right reasons. It's just if it works or if it doesn't. If it doesn't, you're damned, and if it does, you're still damned.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So
I agree. And Sam, I'm not ignoring the footballing elements. I agree with you on them, but it's those people will jump on it. What you will get is United _ Tony, who's got 500,000 followers. And we know that these young players are on socials. So this is why I think it's so prevalent in the modern day game. They're on socials, rightly or wrongly they are. They will jump on it. And it's like almost along the you bantered Arsenal and now you've had a shit performance and they gun at you for it. And it's wrong really, because I'm not saying blindly protect and support your club through every single scenario, but I do find nowadays there's more turning on your own club than I've ever seen before in my life. And I don't quite know. Well, I do know why. There's money to be made. This year, the problem we have is it's been nothing encouraging since he's been who has gotten better. No one, what is wrong with adapting with the players right now to make them successful? Go on. Yeah.
I understand that, but I genuinely believe this squad has come to its mental limit of playing for this club. You gotta remember, Lindelof. Look, today Lindelof was dreadful when he came on. I don't care what anyone says; he was awful. But he's been here for years, seen the same cycle over and over again. He's probably flipping tired. He's gonna leave in the summer on a free. He's done. Maguire, he's been in for years, done. A lot of these players, Dalot, been in for years, and he's done. A lot of these players, I think, are just mentally capped. And when I say that, not actual struggling to think, but I'm talking about like their ability to deal with this situation at Man United is done. And no matter I'll just add it, even if Amorrim did adapt to these players, I genuinely believe that it doesn't really change as much as what we're seeing now, because a lot of these guys are just mentally shot, and this needs a fresh reset. Go on, Nedgy.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, sorry to butt in, bro. I think it's a fair point. Like, I've heard people like Joshua Jack shout out to you as well, bro. But like, I've heard a lot of people have this question. It's a fair question, but I think if you take a step out of the immediate situation right now, if you're looking to fix something short term right now, you would do that. But what you have to understand is if, and again, keyword is if, not saying they are. I do believe personally they are, but if, for the balance, Ineos do have a long-term plan, then what they're going to struggle to do is to get rid of every single player at the moment. So right now, it is much better to start with your philosophy, ingrain it. So if there are any players left over, like your Maguires, like your Mazraouis, De Ligt, Anthony, whatever player you want to use, then at least they've got an understanding. So when people then come into this, or your players, come into this system, they're catching up to where they're already at. And the last thing I would say about that is, at some point, this pressure between a rock and a hard place is going to have to happen. Because the moment Amorrim goes to 3-4-3, or how he does it, whether he does it at in the summer or pre-season, that pre-season isn't going to be enough to then make us great for a whole season. So at some point, we're going to have this little difficult patch. It's rather to get it out the way now, cement what's necessary, and then make it work and make it happen.
Yeah,
I think that's the most honest way. If you're building long term, short term, it makes sense to go 4-2-3-1 or 4-3-3. But long term, if we've got a vision, we should stick with that, in my opinion.
I think as well, Josh, and look, each to their own on this. I feel like there's one thing about Amorrim that he's proven to us, that he's not a liar. And if you go back and watch those first press conferences, those first interviews, I remember him, and I can't remember verbatim what he said now, but it was words to the effect of, in the short term, for the next 12 months, we are going to go through a lot of pain. There is going to be a lot of bad moments. It's going to feel horrible. But in 12 to 18 months, we will see the benefits of that suffering, I think is the word he used. He said, what we could do is adapt to the players now, and in the short term, get better results. But then we're going to be back where we are now, as in sacking another manager. Things haven't developed to move forward. That's all I'm saying to people. So I get you're saying there's been nothing encouraging. I wouldn't necessarily agree, but let's just live in your world for a moment and go, cool. The manager told us this was going to happen. And maybe we all thought, maybe some people thought, he's being modest, isn't he? He's being modest. He's playing it down. He's going to make us amazing. Turns out, I think he was telling us the absolute God's honest truth. Now, where you could be right, Josh, because fast forward 18 months and we're as bad as we are now, we've never got out of 15th. And I'll hold my hands up and say, yeah, he wasn't telling us the truth. He was just a bad coach. And I can hold my hands up and say I got it wrong. The same as all the main people asking for him to be sacked now on socials, I mean, none of them have actually put their hands up and said they were ever wrong for saying we should sack a manager, right? Because, or that saying those managers are the only problem and this squad's good enough to do this and that. But I will. I'm just stating the difference, Josh, between maybe yourself and I is I'm just willing to ride through this pain, criticize the individual games like I have done today. I've said the things I think he should have done differently, and to see where we are at the end of it, because I just don't want to repeat the same mistakes over again. But really good challenge there, mate. Arsenal fans coming for Cheeto wonder why he left them. Yeah, I've seen a few screenshots of absolutely disgusting messages being sent to us. Remember when you're DMing this person, he's 17 years old as well. He's a child.
I had a whole debate in the group chat about this whole thing. Arsenal fans need to touch flipping grass. They expect football players of any age to accept whatever banter, abuse, criticism they want. But as soon as they give something back, it's how dare they? They should be able to take what we're saying. Shut up, you wet wipes. Flipping.
Well, I hear you. Dinesh here says, "Evening, Terry and everyone. Remember when Sir Alex Ferguson was interviewed by Gary Neville? He said he would not play players at Anfield if not mentally ready." No, I agree. And look, it's one of these things. I see. There's a lot of gooners attack the fact that Saliba didn't play early enough for Arsenal. But I'm only remembering this in bits. But he was sent back to France on loan. I think it was to do with. I'm hoping I'm not speaking out of turn. I think his mother was unwell, or his mother or grandmother or somebody was passed away. But he wanted to be closer to home. There's something along those lines. But he wanted to be close to home. He felt a little bit homesick. He wasn't ready to be away from home. And then he came back and turned into a brilliant player. And I always remember people. If he could have been here 2 years ago doing this, but no, there was a mentality issue. Not that it's his fault, but there was a reason he was sent away at a young age. Andre here says Pep, Klopp and Amorim and Arteta didn't give up on their principles and philosophies when they took over, and it took them time to be successful until they got their players in. So why not the same energy for Amorim?
I think, to be fair, I think he's getting
everyone on the panel is showing same energy. To be fair,
yeah, but I do think partly he's getting the same energy because I remember Pep getting called check put manager. He can't play in England.
The British media were like, they don't think his style's going to work here.
Yeah.
I literally, and I've addressed this years ago. I remember saying and this is where I've learned, and this is why you say, and this is why I would say, listen, watch whatever YouTubers you want, watch whatever pundits you want. I was watching I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast a few weeks ago when I was driving to the Super Bowl. And he had a guy on there, something Weinstein, no relation to Harvey, by the way. And they were talking about people they listen to in the social media space. And they got onto the subject about CV19. And I think Brett Weinstein might be his name. But he said something along the lines of, he goes, the people I listen to, because I'm very careful with who I listen to. He says, I don't take mudslingers seriously. And Joe Rogan said, what do you mean by mudslinger? And he said, well, people that are sort of critical of everything, but then they get one right. So they slag everything off. They're talking about politics in this particular podcast, but let's make it about football for an example. They slag off everything that Man United do. Everything's bad. Every signing's bad. Every manager's bad. Every player is bad. Every system is bad. And then every now and then they're going to get something right because, or they get something like specifically right. But that's because they're throwing crap at everything and some of it's going to stick. He also said, I steer away from people that sort of make a big fanfare when they get things right, but are very quiet and never bring up subjects that they've got wrong. And it was an interesting one because we all listen to people regularly on social media because we work in it. We all listen to it as well. And I thought that's such an interesting thing for me. Not that I think I listen to people like that, but I was like, it was an interesting lesson for me to go, I want to be more that way. I want to make sure that I shout less and less about the things I've got right and maybe actually bring up subjects on things that I've got wrong. And that's why this super chat reminds me of it, because I, for about 18 months, said if Klopp sticks with his system, he ain't winning major trophies at Liverpool. It's on record. The content's still out there. I said it regularly because defensively they were fading in games. And then he went and bought Van Dijk and Alisson and the world changed. And it was like, shit, the system works. It was just he didn't have good enough players to bring it alive. And it wasn't just that moment. It wasn't like an epiphany, but I've seen that more and more regularly. And I feel that the one thing I love about the football sort of content community that's been created in the last decade is I've learned more about football in the last 10 years than I think I did the previous period of my life. Because because you are held to account. You say something, you give an opinion, and then you're on the air again when the results come out and people come at you. So I look at it and just think it's why I want to put a bit of faith in this, because I think it's the one thing United have failed to do in the last 12 years is pick a brand of football, hire a manager to coach it, build a squad specifically for that way of playing, and seeing where we are at the end of it. I feel we've abandoned 1 or 2 or 3 elements of that far too early, and that is why we are where we are. So great point there, Andre. We are the same. We are the same, Terry. We are supporters. Husam and Hamza just demand. They can't enjoy ups and downs. Come on, you gooners.
Don't put Husam in the
I
same
can't
breath as
enjoy
Hamza.
I've seen
Don't
more
do
downs.
that.
I'm supporting them for 20 years. Have some shame.
Yeah, I got you back, Husam.
Yeah, and look, Twisted, you can say 15th, and I understand that. And I understand it. And if next season we're in this position, then I'll hold my hands up and be like, yeah, do you know what? Maybe I was wrong for putting faith in what we're trying to build. But maybe we sack him, but continue to build with similar profiles, and it still works. I'm not married to the manager. It's not about the manager for me, per se. It's about sticking to a project. And again, I will say this with the utmost respect to this community. No one is offering me a counter argument to what I'm saying other than you're 15th. It's not an argument, in my opinion. This has a few more comments here. First one says someone is talking about improving players. Terry mentioned this earlier. There is nothing to improve. The players are dead wood. He needs his own players. Then give him a season to do something. Glory, glory, Man United. Listen, I think there's a fair point in there. And again, at the same time, I can only speak for myself. I've definitely criticized a number of things that he's done in those games. And I think we all have on this panel before. But thank you for that super chat. Fuck United. Arsenal lost to this shit. How?
You guys
just make sure you don't lose against Sunday, mate.
Well, that's also the thing here, because then someone came back earlier, Joshua Jack, and said, for you, Terry, what has been encouraging? Well, that performance away at Arsenal was encouraging for me. And what I see with this Amorim team is that
you've actually played well in all the big games.
We have, so that's one thing to be encouraging with. But the reason we've been able
single time I thought Man United were gonna get slapped, and you got slapped. Etihad, Anfield, Emirates.
Yeah,
you were literally good in all those games.
But the problem in those games is that we actually did much better at Anfield than I expected. But typically with those games, we don't have a good enough squad to defend that well and attack at the same time. As soon as we start trying to attack more, the defensive solidity isn't as strong, and I think that's a personnel issue. Like for me personally, that's not even ability half the time. It's speed and power. Being able to get back into position when you're caught without the ball, when possession is turned over, getting back into position. You could be the most technically gifted player in the world, because I still think Christian Eriksen is technically probably more gifted than 80% of the Premier League, but he ain't got them legs. Without them legs in the Prem, you're done. This here says, KJ, I don't condone the Arsenal fans, but someone needs to tell Cheeto to stop the online trolling with Arsenal fans. Ends badly, and it's not good for a kiddie's age.
Let me just say this. I've seen what he said to what he said, quote unquote, said to Arsenal fans. I don't see how laughing emojis and school faces are this big, how dare he, for Arsenal fans to get riled up. The guy said thank you to a teammate for beating Arsenal in the FA Youth Cup, which he was going to play in, but couldn't because he's playing for us in the first team. How dare he congratulate a teammate and say thank you for winning a game?
And KJ, people forget the reason he's saying thank you and laughing face is because the embarrassment, because of the pressure that would have come onto him if they'd have lost, given it's their old teammates and stuff.
Yeah.
That's literally the only reason why I said thank you.
As well, Ola, on top of that as well, Ola, is this. It's like saying, well, you shouldn't have worn that skirt, or you shouldn't have a nice car and drive it down this street. Your fault you got jacked. I don't agree with that. The player is allowed to thank his teammates for winning a game of football without being abused. The same as Fulham players tonight. Bassi should be able to post something and have a dig at Man United without him getting any abuse, anything nasty sent to him or his partner. I said about his children. I don't know if he's got kids. I'm just saying there's nothing these players are doing that warrant that, in my personal opinion. It should be 100% condemned and condoned every step of the way. I didn't mean the same energy from the panel. I meant from people that are Amorim out. Yeah, but you're never going to get the same energy because people just want to be right. So people have already married themselves to, I've got to say he's not good enough. So now what you will see, probably until he wins the Premier League, is them continue in that vein. And even if we have a great 6 months, the day there's a bad result, it will be straight into fucking told you always. People do this online. I would say there's a good 20% of people that use online forums to speak football, whether it's on camera, whether they tweet, whether it's TikTok, is they marry themselves to opinions. Bruno is bad. Amorrim is amazing. Klopp is overrated. Pep is a checkbook manager. And I'm using examples here, and they stick to that. Today, I've been arguing with Liverpool fans. Some telling me legitimately the League Cup has always been bigger than the FA Cup, so their treble is worth more than ours. The fact is that FIFA and UEFA don't recognize any treble other than FA Cup, Champions League, Premier League. I ain't making that up. It's literally on their websites. What the official terms are. And then I get, well, you're downplaying what we've done. I'm not downplaying anything Liverpool did. I'm just pushing back against a Liverpool supporter who put on the internet that the term the treble was created in 1999 when I showed footage from the 1977 FA Cup final when Liverpool lost. The commentator said, and the treble dream is over. It's like, I'm not diminishing or taking anything away from anyone. It's just people. There are certain people that are stuck to that thing now. I am never letting it go. And I'm going to do everything in my power to make the world think that the treble isn't really a thing or it isn't special. And that's the way social media is.
Also, guys in the chat, we know it's not all Arsenal fans. If it applies to you, then look at yourself. If it's
exactly.
not, don't worry about it. Like, we're not talking about
the Arsenal fans doing it. This is what I would say to people in those circumstances. You should be out there finding the Arsenal fans that have done it and condemning them as well. Or if you come across them, you don't necessarily have to hunt them down. That ain't your job, but you should just be condemning them. You know, we know it isn't all Arsenal fans. The same as, by the way, in that video I did today about the treble, the amount of Liverpool fans I've responded to, some of them have sent me private messages who have been amazing, saying, Terry, 100% with you on this. You know, 100% agree with you on this. And they gave their reasons for it. I know it isn't all fans, but the ones that have done it absolutely need to be called out. Terry, are you scared of a debate? It depends on who the debate is with and on what subject. Would I be scared to have a debate with Jordan Peterson about the psychology of a human being? Yes, because I'd get ruined, bruv. Do you know what I mean? I'd get ruined. Do I want to debate Amorim in or Amorim out? Not particularly. Not particularly, because I'm not going to be able to convince anyone that they're wrong, and I don't necessarily want to. They're not going to be able to convince me that I'm wrong right now, and they probably don't want to. So therefore, I don't see the point of spending an hour, which will probably turn into loads of people being abusive and nasty to each other, to come to the conclusion of, well, I still think I'm right, and I still think I'm right. They can state their opinion. I'm going to state mine, and that's all it needs to be right now. That's all it needs to be. I agree the performance against Arsenal was good, but I expect everyone who beats us to go into the cup. I'm more pissed Arsenal didn't go further. But we only really beat you as well because Kai Havertz and Odegaard missed sitters that day as well. Like, the great as we defended, and we got a red card that was a rightful red card, by the way. So, yeah, you should have won, no doubt. I think even if Amorim finishes still around 10th next season, realistically, still shouldn't be sacked. I think Amorim United are going to mirror Teta and Arsenal. Maybe. And look, we have to see what the performances look like. Are we playing really well, but just missing maybe a clinical striker that's missing chances, but actually we're performing really well? If we're 10th and we're playing like crap, but we get away with it because someone keeps scoring screamers from outside the box, I'm giving you 2 examples, I think the conversation might be different. I think next year, even for me, we've got to start seeing a massive progression in the quality of football on the pitch. This his own players thing is wrong. United need to have a philosophy and sign players that align with that. But that's what we're building. So this is where I think we're on the same page, me and you. But the philosophy that we've decided to build is one that Amorim coaches. So it's just semantics here. I agree with you. We shouldn't be buying players for Amorim. We should be playing players that fit the club's philosophy. But that club philosophy should mirror the way Amorim plays football and the profiles he wants. There should be a synergy. It should be one of the same thing. The one thing you don't do, just like Klopp to slot, is change managers who then need a complete overhaul of profiles, which is why Liverpool said no to Amorim. Because they realized we're going to have to overhaul everything, and we don't need to because we've got a brilliant squad. So I do agree with you, but I think semantics is playing at things here. English Talent says United fans hiding behind time and cycle is the reason of the mess Ten Hag left. more successful managers came from Portugal, like VS Bowen and Foud. So again, where you're wrong about this is
what you're saying is a possibility, but we don't know yet.
well, yeah, you could be right. He could be a bad manager. That isn't what I'm challenging. The time and cycle thing, I agree with to a certain element, but it was never the time and the cycle. Go back to the origins, English Talent FC. And let's not forget the real reason that Ten Hag failed. He came in with a set way of playing. They brought in players that were matching that system and style. We know that because a lot of them played for him before or were targets before. But then he didn't implement his style from day one. He adapted to the players. So it wasn't about time and a cycle. It was about never implementing.
And then everyone wanted Ten Hag out anyway 2 years later.
Yeah. And this is the crazy thing. English Talent, what you're asking the new manager to do is exactly the reason why Ten Hag failed. He didn't fail because he was given time, per se. He failed because he was given too much time, not implementing the system that he and the players he bought were used to. We should have built that system, made it work. Then if he's good enough or not, the new guy that comes in picks the baton on and keeps running, rather than to stop the race and then start again. But thank you for the super chat, bro. Husam, educate these clowns about Klopp, who adapted to players Lallana and Coutinho, then evolved to Mane and Salah. Klopp even played a back five in some games.
I'll be honest with you, bro. This is just me being completely honest. Klopp didn't adapt to shit. We ran from the first game. I'll be honest with you. This is so wrong. This is the wrongest super chat of the day. Klopp adapted to nothing. His first game after one training session was away at Tottenham Hotspur. The team ran so much that day. I've never seen them run as much. That season, in his first half season, we pulled about 7 hamstrings. And he was like, this is the shittest word of the year for me, hamstring. Klopp did not adapt nothing, and those who he thought could not be a part of the team were sold and moved on. He kept the likes of Lallana, Milner, Henderson, other players who maybe some wouldn't have thought stayed. He kept them, and they adapted to him. Literally from day one, we played club ball. I can give you examples from our first half season where we beat Norwich 5-4. Stephen Cocker up front, we conceded 4 goals. Lallana scored the winner at the end, broke Klopp's glasses.
Do you know what's really funny about that as well is that people think formation dictates system, and it isn't. It's application and instruction when in position. And this is something, even the FIFA generation should understand this, because there's something I didn't realize when I was playing. So I'm throwing a bit of a dig at the FIFA generation, even though I play FIFA. I don't assess football based on FIFA though. But I was getting annoyed that I was getting I've worked out a way of playing where I can get the ball to the byline near the 6-yard box quite well. But far too often, my striker's never running in. And then I realized you can change their player instructions. So now, Isak is now, because I've put him on the poacher, every time I get the ball there, he's always making that run. I'm scoring all these tap-ins. It's great. Where before, he would sit back in the position behind defenders. And I was like, well, why is he not making the fucking run? Didn't work. The reason why I use that is it doesn't matter whether I play 4-4-2, 4-2-3-1, 3-5-2-1. The instruction on that striker now is the same every time. He does the same thing. So you can evolve. And even today, people won't talk about this, but you could see there were times out of possession where we were sitting in more of a 4-4-2. We had more of a 4-4-2 shape where you would have one of the fullbacks drop into a left-back role, the centre-back spread themselves out, and Maz was on a right-sided midfield position. So we were in a 4-4-2 out of possession lows today.
Did that last week as well.
And we did it last week. So there are times in the game where we drop into a back 4. There's times where we drop into a back 5, and it's fluid. And I've said for many, many years, the idea of people argue over 4-2-3-1 and 4-3-3 in game. They're so fucking similar. I just don't waste any time and energy on it.
A 4-3-3 could easily turn into a 3-4-3 like we play anyway. Yeah, and this is why I'm not vexed about what the formation is. I understand what he wants to do. That's all the main thing.
No, I agree. And it's, again, today, the approach play. Up into the box, I was fine with it. What we then lacked, and this is just irony really for United fans, is we used to moan that we had great individual brilliance, but we couldn't get the ball to the box, right? We dismantled all of that because the fans complained. Now we can get the ball to the edge of the box, but we don't have the individual brilliance to scare our opponents. We've got to build that again now. So, yeah, it's crazy. This says Ten Hag sacked because he adapted. Biggest lie. I don't think that is the biggest lie. Do you know why I know it isn't the biggest lie? It wasn't only sacked for that. He told us himself. He literally said himself last season, I will never play that way here. I will never try to do that. And as soon as he said that, most Man United fans that view things my way, well, I think he's done here. Because that's why we all got excited about him coming. What we didn't want is that style developed for him, players bought for him, and then when he leaves, another style created because you go through this mass overhaul. But to say that's a lie is crazy. He literally himself said it. Now, did I say he was sacked for that reason? Directly that reason, no. But what happened is because he didn't implement his style, because we had this Frankenstein squad, because consistency wasn't created, then there wasn't the regularity of wins because there wasn't a consistency. That's why he lost his job. But I believe if Ten Hag came in, spent the money he did, built a style of football that was possession-based, good, one-touch, two-touch football, didn't use the Ten Hag's Island in the middle as an example, spent the money on the right profiles of player, do I think he would have been more successful? There's a large possibility the answer is yes. Amorrim won't mirror Teta. Arsenal, United can't buy the players Amorim needs without having to sell the players, and United isn't ready to sell them yet.
Wait. What players aren't we ready to sell? We're not ready to sell Ericsson, Casemiro, Lindelof, Rashford, Sancho, Anthony. Who else is there on that list? Malacia,
Loads.
Evan. Like, come on, guys. This whole United won't get any players because we have to sell to buy. Yeah, yes, because we want to sell them.
Yes,
like we want to get rid of them.
They'll be sold. Amorim can't improve the system. The board don't seem like they will back him after wasting dollars on players like Egghead Ten Hag, and maybe they won't. And if they're not going to back any manager, then again, I go back to my point an hour ago. It's a futile, flaccid, impotent conversation to then talk about sacking a manager if no manager is going to be backed, because then we're always going to be. Doesn't matter if we're 15th or 8th. If we're never actually going to back a manager, what really is the difference?
I'm telling you, fold it.
Fold it. Agree, Terry. What I'm saying is I hope the club philosophy is Amorim's. What scares me is if we sign without thinking that through first. No, I do agree with you. I totally agree. The problem is I'm not going to worry about that yet. I'm not going to worry about it because that might be a year away. It might be 10 years away. And I don't think there's any point in losing energy over it. It's why you saw a lot of people, pundits I'm talking, write Liverpool off this year. Because they just thought, well, it's a new manager, it's going to be an overhaul. I don't think they've taken any time to listen to what's going on. Yeah, I'm just not losing any energy over it. But I do have that worry, but it's just something I'm not overly focused on right now. Sooner or later, United fans will fall in love with Amorim because he brings more in. By the way, I would take Obi at Arsenal right now for sure. I appreciate you saying that. I never said sack him, keep Amorim. Yeah, listen, that's when I will start to genuinely worry about Amorim at United is when rivals start singing about keeping him, and that's their main focus. The focus is too quick to sack him. You got to sack him. You got to sack him. And I'm like, the energy seems a little bit off to me there. Terry, what I was saying earlier is that I hope the club decide they want a philosophy that aligns with Amorim's before hiring him. If not, listen, I agree. And if they're not doing that, and that ends up not being what they're doing, I'll call it out. I just can't waste energy moaning or being frustrated about something that may or may not happen in the future. I will take them by their word now, and I'll assess it bit by bit. Some people go the other way. Some people do what I call mudslinging. I'm going to sling mud at all of it, and hopefully it goes wrong. And one of the things I said is part of that problem, and I can say I was right. That's the easier way to do it. The easier way to do it is to do that and just be negative. And some United fans will be. Some of them might end up being right. It's just not my disposition. And I'm not saying they're wrong for thinking it. I'm not saying they shouldn't say it. I've just got a different perspective and point of view. And if somebody wants to have a serious conversation about it, I'm always up for doing it. But getting into a debate with an Amorim outer right now, there's zero mileage in it. Zero mileage. It gets some views and some super chats and great, but I just don't see how productive that would be. It doesn't make any sense to me. United fans in my group chat smiled, smited by the footy gods. Yeah, some certainly did. Look, I want to thank everyone who has tuned in, whether you've agreed, whether you've disagreed with our opinions on tonight's show. We're back tomorrow with more content, including the top 6 show. I want to again congratulate Fulham for going through to the next round. They did deserve it today. They played very well. And look, there's a few teams left in it, Fulham and Brighton, who have never won an FA Cup. And I will personally be fervently behind them in their pursuit of winning silverware for the first time in their history. KJ, always a pleasure to speak to you, young man. To all of our super chatters, to everyone who's commented, everyone who's hit the like button, a big thank you to each and every single one of you, whether we agree or not. And that's the beauty of talking football. Take care. Goodbye. God bless. And I'll see you all again soon. Peace.